Ever wonder how a giant company decides to drop, say, $1 billion on a new project? Yeah, they don't just flip a coin. They use this really powerful process for making these huge, long-term decisions. And today, we're going to break down exactly how it works. Okay, just imagine this for a second. You're in the boardroom and everyone looks at you and says, "We've got $1 million ready to go. Should we build that new factory?" I mean, the pressure's on, right? This one decision could literally shape the company's future for the next decade. How do you even begin to answer that? Now, $1 million factory might feel a little abstract, so let's bring it down to a scale we can all relate to. The principle is exactly the same. Your favorite local bakery wants to buy a new $50,000 oven. They think it'll help them make more bread, which means more money. But is it really worth it? It's the same fundamental question, just with fewer zeros. And we're going to keep coming back to this bakery. So whether we're talking about a factory or an oven, you need a system. A gut feeling just isn't going to cut it when this much money and time is on the line. You absolutely need a structured way to look into the future and figure out if an investment is actually going to pay off. And that system, well, it has a name: capital budgeting. It's the formal process businesses use to analyze major projects and investments that will stick around for a while. Think of it as a financial toolkit for deciding whether a big purchase, like new machines, a new building, or even a whole new product line, is a smart move that's going to make the company richer down the road. I like to think of it as a roadmap for your money. You wouldn't just jump on a car and start driving randomly, hoping you'll end up at your destination, right? No, you follow a series of clear, logical steps that get you from a simple idea to a final and hopefully profitable decision. And the process itself is this really clear 6-step cycle. You start by brainstorming ideas and then screening them to see if they're even feasible, but the heart of it, the real meat, is step 3, evaluation. That's where you really run the numbers. After that, you pick the winner, you put the plan into action, and then, and this is key, you look back later to see if your predictions were right. It's a full circle. So why bother with all these steps? Well, because these decisions have a massive long-term impact. You can't just return a factory to the store if it doesn't work out. This whole process forces you to look at the risks. It makes sure you're putting your limited funds into the projects that will grow the most. And it all drives toward that one ultimate goal: making the company's owners as wealthy as possible. All right, let's get into the fun part, that critical evaluation step. Once you have a project that looks promising, how do you actually analyze it? This is where the toolkit comes in. There are several different financial methods you can use to put a hard number on a project's potential. These tools basically fall into 2 main categories. On one side, you've got the traditional methods. I call these the gut check. They're quick, they're simple, but they're not super precise. Then, on the other side, you have the discounted cash flow, or DCF methods. This is the deep dive. They're a bit more complex, but they are way more powerful because they're built on one of the most important concepts in all of finance, that a dollar in your hand today is worth more than a dollar you're promised next year. Let's start with the simple one from the gut check category: the payback period. This method answers one and only one question: how fast do I get my money back? So for our bakery, the initial investment is $50,000. If the new oven brings in an extra $10,000 a year, you just divide 50 by 10, and you get a payback period of 5 years. Simple as that. The rule here is that shorter is usually better because it just feels less risky. Okay, now let's move over to the heavyweight champion of capital budgeting, net present value, or NPV. This one is a total game changer. What it does is it calculates all the future cash a project will ever bring in, it translates all that future money into what it's worth today, and then it subtracts the initial cost. The number you're left with is the total exact amount of value in today's dollars that this project will add to the company. It's powerful stuff. And the best part? The decision rule is incredibly simple. If the net present value is positive, even if it's just by a single dollar, it means the project is expected to create value. So if NPV is greater than 0, you accept. End of story. Next up is the Profitability Index, or PI. You can think of this as the bang for your buck metric. It's a close cousin of NPV. Instead of subtracting the initial cost, you divide the present value of all those future cash flows by it. This gives you a ratio that tells you exactly how much value you're getting back for every single dollar you put in. And the decision rule here is just as straightforward. If the PI is greater than 1, it means for every dollar you invest, you're creating more than a dollar in value. That is a crystal clear signal to move forward with the project. And finally, we have the internal rate of return, or IRR. Now, this one's a little more abstract, but it's super useful.
It actually calculates the exact percentage return that a project is expected to generate over its life. You can think of it as finding the project's own internal interest rate. So the decision is simple. You compare that rate, the IRR, to what it costs you to get the money in the first place. If your project's return is higher than your borrowing cost, you're making money. Now, these formulas look so clean and perfect on a slide, don't they? But you and I both know the real world is messy. Making the right call isn't just about plugging numbers into a calculator. You have to read the fine print, and you have to navigate the huge uncertainty of the future. There are so many real-world variables that come into play. The absolute biggest one is that all of this depends on estimated cash flows. You are literally forecasting the future. And let's be honest, forecasts can be wrong. You also have to think about how much your funding costs, the project's specific risks, and even things like legal or environmental factors that don't show up on a spreadsheet.
And this is why it's so crucial to remember the limitations of these tools. Look, they're only as good as the assumptions you feed them, and they definitely can't measure everything. What about the boost to employee morale from working in a new, better factory? Or the damage to your brand if a new product launch is a total flop? Those qualitative factors are vital, but they don't fit neatly into the formulas.
Okay, let's pull back for a second and connect all these details to the big picture. Why have we spent all this time going through the whole process, from the basic steps to the complex formulas? It's because this is how smart companies grow. It doesn't matter if it's a $50,000 decision at a local bakery or a billion-dollar decision in a corporate boardroom. The principles of capital budgeting are what separate a wild guess from a calculated strategic investment. It really is the engine that turns capital into more capital, and it helps ensure that a company's biggest bets are also its best bets. And that leaves us with one final thought. This framework isn't just for corporations. Think about it. Going to college, buying a house, even just starting a major personal project. These are all long-term investments with uncertain payoffs. So what's the next big investment in your life that could use this kind of thinking? How could a little capital budgeting help you make a smarter decision?